Welcome to the Tribe of Testimonies. Here you will find conversations with faithful Native American members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sharing their stories and their love of the Savior. My name's Andrea Hales. I'm Navajo, and I'm glad that you've decided to come and join us today. This is the first time that I've done this. I am going to split this interview into two parts. So today is part one, and my guest, Sonny LaFontaine, just was so vulnerable and willing to share, and the Spirit must have moved him to share all the things that he did. So I'm not going to delete any of it. This is part one, and next week there will be part two. So here's the interview. I'm on the phone today with Brother Sonny LaFontaine. Sonny, would you please introduce yourself in your tribal way as much as possible? If it's in your language, great. If it's not, that's fine. Not everybody speaks their language, and some languages are dead.
Yes. My language is not dead. My language was taught to me, and unfortunately, I was rambunctious in learning the language my mom was working on teaching me and my sisters, and unfortunately, we were too difficult to teach, so we did not learn. I did not learn my native tongue, but I'm Navajo, and from the Navajo side of my mom, from her family, she's full-blooded Navajo. We're from the Red Clay Bottom Clan. This is where I'm born, and I'm born from my dad, which is Chippewa. So I'm split nation, and that's where I originate from. And my name from the Navajos are, I can't even say it. It was just my mom said it to me a couple of different times, but I couldn't retain it.
Do you know your English translation of it?
It means little big man.
Little big man. Cool. Sonny, would you share something that you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel of Jesus Christ? It can be pretty much anything. A story, a celebration, a way of life, a ceremony. What do you love about your heritage as it relates to the gospel?
Man, whenever we were setting up for this interview, and excuse me that I sound congested. I guess when I got older in my life, I picked up being allergic to things and also having allergies, which is surprising to me. But there's a lot that I've been thinking about whenever you sent me that question when we talked about it. Because there's so many different things that that I look at. Whenever I was pondering your question, what the similarities and what I see between both our culture and the gospel of Jesus Christ, I always look towards the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon being written for us. I really believe that. And I was able to develop my own testimony of Jesus Christ. And not only develop my own testimony of Jesus Christ, but to develop my own relationship with Jesus Christ. And then I had to pray about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, just like everyone else has to find out if that's the way I'm supposed to walk. But I don't know. There's so many different stories. I mean, where would you like me to start? I can start at the beginning of my life and go all the way through it like I do, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, do that. Were you
Okay.
raised as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes. Okay. So yes, I was. So in the early days when we were growing up, we lived in Utah. Me and my dad. My legal name is Michael John LaFontaine Jr. But my grandma, my Shuma, excuse me, my my mom's mom, she was the one that gave me my nickname. So whenever we would go visit my mom's parents on the reservation in Crown Point, New Mexico, she would call me, you know, Michael or Mike, and me and my dad would both answer. And she didn't speak much English, so it was very frustrating for her to get us both coming, you know. And then after a little while, she gave me my nickname, Sonny, Son. So, but growing up in Utah, we would go back when I was younger to my mom's people, and be around my mom and her sisters. She had a lot of sisters that lived on the res still. I had a lot of cousins that still lived out there.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we'd go back, they'd have a get together. You know, I'd go out there to their property that they had, and my mom would show us how she lived and how she grew up. On a dirt floor, no running water, an outhouse. Different sheep. They used to herd sheep, raise sheep, and I got to experience that in the summer. We go out there for a little bit and hang out with family. Of course, everybody spoke the language except for me and my sisters. So at times we kind of felt like outsiders, because we're not, um, we're Indian, we're native, right? But we're not native because we don't speak the language and we don't live on the res. For somebody who doesn't live on the res and who is native, you're not really native. I mean, I had a, I was kind of felt that way, not made to feel that way, but um, I guess I felt that way because I was still treated like an outsider. If that makes sense. So, I mean, my grandma, she would get on to my cousins, and she would, you know, get on to other people when we would come to visit and celebrate us and just really be excited to see us because we didn't live there. And I could see why that would aggravate some of our cousins and relatives that live there, that didn't leave, that stayed there, on how she would react. But and I could see why they would act that way. But at the same time, I could see why my grandma would be so excited to see us and be so excited to celebrate with us that we would return. Um,
Well, that description right there totally just makes me think of the prodigal son story in the New Testament, and just being able to celebrate people that haven't been there.
yeah. So whenever I start thinking about my grandma, I always get just really emotional. I don't know. It just seems like it just seems like from early on with her, like I've always felt a real deep connection with my grandma. it's even hard to go back. Like I think last year we went to a funeral for one of my cousins, and it was on the res in Crown Point, and it was just my mom and me. That went back, and then I think it's probably been about beforehand, probably man, I don't know, 10 years beforehand. That I went back, and I mean, it was it was a great feeling to go back and see people, but at the same time, it's like um, the older grandmothers of you know that are on the res, they all look the same, to me, and it made me happy to see, just our people, my people. But you bringing up and talking about the prodigal son. Throughout my life, I've never really, I never not had a connection or a relationship with the Great Spirit, or to me is the Savior Jesus Christ. I've always felt that there was something, and being raised in the church, I always was prayerful, and I was baptized, and we went to church regularly. I think when I was about, so we moved from Utah, living in Utah, to we moved to Florida, and when I was in elementary school, and the reason that I can remember was, so my dad was a diesel mechanic and was going to school, and that's what he was going to do. And he had brothers. I think he had 5 brothers, and 2 of them moved came back to Florida, Jacksonville area, started like painting houses and hanging out at the beach, and telling my dad, hey, it's freezing cold over there, but we're painting houses and surfing still, and he's just like, because they used to live here in Florida a while ago when my grandfather was in the military.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came back and worked and made money, and they're making X amount of money. He's working his butt off. It's cold, and he's just like, this ain't where we're supposed to be. Granted, my mom didn't want to leave the res from the beginning. She was part of the Indian placement program when she was younger, and she shared some personal stuff with me pertaining to that, and how she could see that, how our people would be. When I talk about our people, um, I'm not including other nations. When I say my people, I'm talking about my the Navajo people, you know, because they had what was called, and it probably had it with, I'm sure they had it with other nations. They had the Indian placement program back in I think it was the late 60s, 70s. The church, our church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it gave a bad taste in some people's mouth. But for those who had the vision, like my grandmother, whenever that came to, she saw the importance behind it. The importance of education, the importance of her kids able to, grow up with that, and then come back for the summer. So my mom's experience, depending on how your heart is going into something, it could come out great, and you can learn and grow. Or if your heart's full of hate and negativity, it could be the worst experience of your life. And my mom shared that with me. I completely understood why some people were turned off by it. But that being said, my mom, she moved away from the res and lived in Utah, and that's where she met my dad when she was going to school. So for her, to be that far, and then my dad say, "All right, we're gonna move to Florida." She was just like, are you crazy? That's even further from my family, you know?" And she's like, "What's in Florida?" She's never been to Florida, you know, Disney World. That's what everybody thinks of when they think of Florida. Orange is at Disney World, an occasional alligator that's everywhere. And so she's like, "Okay." They prayed about it as a family, and that's where we came. So I went from living in like a rural part of Utah, which is Payson. It's not rural anymore. They got two temples, I think, almost, or building a second one. And so we moved from Utah when I was in elementary school to the ghettos of Jacksonville. So I went from an all white school to an all black school, except for me and my sisters and one white girl. And my hair was a little bit longer, and it was jet black, and it was, thick. So, and I always share this experience because I'm also part of my story. Also plugs me into part of the AA community, and I'll get to that eventually. So whenever we moved Utah to from Utah to Jacksonville, we started going to school and we rode the bus and inner city stuff. We ended up attracting some of the younger black girls because they used to love to sit behind me on the bus and play with my hair and try to braid it. Because it was long. Who has long black hair like that in the inner city? I mean, not many people. They're used to their boyfriends, and so that right there made me feel like I was important, but also at the same time it put me against everybody else because it kind of alienated me and made enemies for me because all their boyfriends, I could see them getting jealous and angry, and they later on, a few weeks into it, later on, I could see them riding their bikes and threatening me, and then then it went from threats to actually being in fights, and I would hide in our school because I was tired of it, and then a few months into it, we moved from another house to another house, and then eventually jumped. My dad was working hard, and they were saving, and we moved from another place to another place, all the way to where we were able to move to the suburbs, and that's where we ended up. That's where I ended up living from uh, my last year. I think my fifth or sixth year of elementary school, all the way up to when I graduated and went on a mission and moved out of the house myself. And then when we were younger, throughout the day, or throughout our time in Orange Park, I got involved in scouting with my dad. Scouting was big in our church group, and I had a large amount of friends that were members, and a large amount of friends that weren't members. And we went on camping trips, and it's Florida, so my dad he worked hard. He was able to buy a nice boat, and we went boating in the summer. Some days after school, and we did all kinds of camping trips and summer trips. And our troop was actually really goal oriented as far as like, if we went to summer camp, we would do like a competition summer camps, and then we would try to beat other troops. And then we had a good troop of graduating Eagle Scouts, and I was able to get my Eagle Scout. And meanwhile, as far as the church goes, and my connection with my people, the Navajos, we had one activity that where we did a camping trip to the res, well, we did well, not really just a camping trip to the res. We did a whole Western 2 to 3 week trip with the Boy Scouts. And it was just our troop. And it led with, us going to different places. We went to my people's place over in, in Shiprock, and we went to Window Rock. We went all over the place. We went to Chaco Canyon. We went a couple different other places, but and I think I was like 14 or 15. And while we were there, we were going to plan on seeing my grandma, and she wasn't feeling too well. When I was like 14 or 15, and we're on the scout, excursion trip to the south or to the west, we my grandma falls ill, and my mom, she comes out, and they're meeting, and we're doing stuff with the scouts, but also something's up with my grandma, and I remember like a couple things when I was younger, just spending time with her and talking with her. But of course, she spoke Navajo, and you know, I I didn't. And it's hard for me to understand, but there's I don't know. There's something about even though I didn't speak the language, and my grandmother, she couldn't really speak English too well. I could really still feel her love, for myself, and for my sisters. Like that, it didn't matter that we didn't speak the language. I could just feel it. So when we're over there doing the scouting trip, like I was saying, she fell sick, and then I think my mom told us what was happening, and when she told me, I understood. I mean, I wasn't too young to not understood, but that was like the first uh, death that I experienced. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
And I when she told us she was sick and she wasn't going to she's not getting any better. I remember we were all riding in this big red van, all the scouts. It was our scoutmaster's van. And my scoutmaster, his he was friends with my dad. They known each other for a long time, and he was we were parked outside, and we were going to go do another activity because we're staying close to the res and going and doing activities like Chaco Canyon, places that we could drive that are be reasonably close, so everybody still has their experience as a troop, because it's a summer camp, but also keeping in mind that I have a sick grandma and I need to kind of hang around. And she ends up calling for me and sending for me. So my mom calls and tells me I need to come over, and I get out of this red van. I remember, walking into her house and going into her room that she's in, and I just I see her in the bed. I go over to her, and I just lay my head on her. And she just passed my head, and he just says, my son. And I just remember, and I remember feeling the sadness that because I knew that was the last time that I was going to see her. I have no clue why. I mean, now I know why, but at the time I didn't know why. And then, later on, And I think it was when I went to the van, I got in the van, I was just quiet. People were like, they could tell I was crying. My friends were like, you know, they were being, they were friends, so they were like being nice to me and stuff. And I just was quiet. I remember later on that day, I just got this feeling when I sat there thinking about her on her property when we were camping that night. It was, I think this is like was my turning point that I knew that that there was a God and that everybody around him, that he knew me personally, because as I sat there, at night when we're camping, I'm just looking out at the stars. And I don't know if you've been out, living in Florida and with all this light pollution, there's so much you don't see the stars. So when I go to the res, and there's not much light pollution, you can just see the billions of stars out there, and it's amazing. So, I'm this little kid, and I'm just sitting there with this grief, and I just look out to the vastness of space and the billions of stars, and then having that feeling that, hey, you're not alone. And I had that, that wonderful experience, and then I felt the impression that I would see her again. That I would see my grandmother again, and then it was an amazing experience. Just my first spiritual experience, because I've had other spiritual experiences in my life when I was younger, but this is one of one profound one that I had was when I knew my grandmother, my Shuma, was taking the next journey. Then I looked out and into the heavens at night and saw the stars, and I had that reassuring feeling that things were going to be okay, and that I would see her again. And that was my first time at the age between 14 and 15 that I had something that profound happen to me. Because I'm in my story. We'll talk, you'll see that I'm plugged into AA, and that community, and in that community, you always hear the same type of not type of story, but same type of underlining between different people. That they really didn't believe in anything. And that's not true for me. And that's what I share when I share my AA story. That it's not that I never believed in anything or knew anything was there, because I've always felt a connection to something. There was always something there. Even though I grew up LDS, everybody who even grows up, even Baptist or Methodist or, whatever, they still have to find their own way and have their own experiences, and for me at 14 or 15, this was, without me knowing, this was a major experience of mine. So, after that experience, and my grandmother, she passed away, and we finish our camping trip, and then we come back home, and life continues on. As far as her funeral, I don't think we were there for that. I think we kept going on with our trip, and then my mom, she stayed with the family. I don't know if my sisters were there or not. And then it was rough for me, going back, because I looked to going back to my res as something exciting, and a part of me was there, and then that happened with my grandma, and I really didn't want to go back. It wasn't something I looked forward to anymore. I never told my mom that, you know, because I don't know. I just didn't want to like be a burden to her and give her a problem to go back and see her family. But after that happened with my grandma, even though my grandfather was still alive, my grandpa Charlie, I don't know. I've been told like by my mother that so with our the matriarch system in the Navajo community, the way it's set up, the women are there's great importance on the women and their connection with the Great Spirit and what they feel with the Spirit and what they can see, what they can see coming. And my mom has told me that it's not odd for a male to have that, but she said that I have it, and that and the gifts of the Spirit, which are promised. If you get a patriarchal blessing, you know, that tells you're told what gifts of the Spirit you have, and mine is I do have visions and uh, spiritual experiences with other spirits and other family members that have passed on. I've had some beautiful experiences, and I share them with my mom, and she shared some with me, and she told me that's what it's from. She goes, your grandmother had that, and she goes, and I have that, and she goes, I can tell you have that. It I like it, but at the same time, it's sometimes in the past I would ignore it, if that makes sense, because it would be just kind of like I felt like it was a burden,
Mm-hmm.
because
A responsibility.
yeah, responsibility, or it would just get sometimes the spirit's just so overwhelming that I just it's just all in, I don't know. It's like that part in with King Lamoni in the Book of Mormon, that the spirit is so strong that it knocked people out. You know, it's like the spirit engulfs me so much. It's just, I don't know. I mean, even when I've given like I hate to jump around, but this just happened a couple weekends ago. My family, I was able to bless my son, my oldest son, and give him not the priesthood, but to advance him from deacon to teacher. I gave him a blessing, and with my story, I just got my membership back to do so, which was a huge thing. So my dad and mom, they live over an hour away. They came in for it, and my dad stood in. But and during that blessing, my mind was, uh, you know, I couldn't speak for. I started going through the blessing, I followed the format of the blessing, and then the part where you can give them your own personal blessing or words of encouragement. I was started into that, and I was carried away by the Spirit, and I couldn't talk, and my mind like opened up to what his life could be if he followed the teachings of Jesus Christ. And it was an amazing feeling, and it was an amazing experience what I saw in that short of time. And I gathered my feelings, and was able to finish the blessing and move on. And then when we got home, my wife was like, we were talking, getting out of our church clothes and just talking in our room, and she was just like, So yeah, whenever you were giving a blessing, you stopped talking. Granted, it was only for a minute or so, but that's still a long time. She's like, "What happened?" And I told her that experience. And she was like, she was blown away. And I'm just like, you know, it was a cool experience, but at the same time, it was an experience meant for me, and I don't share that experience with a lot of people. I don't even think I told my mom and dad about it. But so growing up in the church, developed my own testimony of Jesus Christ. Reading the Book of Mormon, and not only reading the Book of Mormon and leaning on the Book of Mormon. Um, those stories in the Book of Mormon, they and each story and what it means to me. There's just so much in there. Um, I went on a mission. When I was 18. We graduated high school, Orange Park High School. I was relatively a I guess a decent kid. I didn't really cause too many issues. Of course, and where I was at, I messed around with recreational weed and would drink here and there. With American Indians, we have a allergy to alcohol worse than I feel any other culture out there. Alcoholism runs rampant, and the I didn't drink all the time when I was in high school. No drinker, but that does affect me later on in my story. So I'm working with my dad had his own painting business / remodeling company, and so when I graduated high school, I just started working with him. And I always talked about going on a mission when I was growing up. I don't know. It was just something I always wanted to do, and then the way my mom used to talk about the missionaries when she was on the res, living on the res, and when they'd come visit. And, we always had missionaries at our house when I was growing up. And it was just something that it was always something I knew I wanted to do. So growing up, that was something that, my parents always knew I was going to do. But then when I was 18 and I was kind of acting stupid, they're like, okay, so you're going on a mission, getting your papers in. I was like, no, I'm not going to go. And everyone's like, what? And I was just like, yeah, I really don't feel like I should go. And I think that kind of like was a shock to my parents, and it wasn't that I didn't want to go. It's just I was comfortable doing nothing, just hanging around with my friends and, doing whatever I wanted to do. And who wants to grow up, So from what I can recall, I don't think there was like a lightning bolt strike me or a burning bush say, hey, you need to go on a mission and wake up. It was just, I don't know. It was just one day that I was just, I don't know what I was doing. I was just like, you know what? I think I should go on a mission. I think it's time. And I didn't really go on a mission too late either. I put my papers in, and then I got called. I got my call in. I opened it up, and I was called to the San Bernardino, California English speaking mission. And I had to leave in I was called to report to the MTC August 6th, 2001, in Provo, Utah. And it was an awesome experience. I mean, went from being at home to doing, nothing to having structure. I mean, you have structure not that I didn't have structure at home, but this is like my own structure of leisure time, to going from that to just being 24 hours, 7 days a week, 2 hours straight to just the mission. All you're doing is that, the Lord's work. You have to change your whole heart and your whole mind, your whole thinking. You got to be teachable. And if you're fighting to do it your way, not the Lord's way, it makes it even more difficult. Luckily for me, I am stubborn, but at the same time, I don't mind. It wasn't that I was against the Lord's way. I just wanted the option to do it another way, And for me, growing up, I've always been a leader. I've always had people that followed me, and I always was a leader. Even when I was little, my mom and dad would always point that out to me, or other people would see it. Even today, people are like, "Yeah, you're a natural born leader." People gravitate to you, and I don't know. I hate the term alpha male. That people go around. I'm an alpha male. I'm a leader. I hate when people say that. It really bugs me. Someone who's like that, who exudes that ability or that persona or character, they don't have to say that about themselves, if that makes sense. I believe that somebody who carries and shows it to themselves, and people can see it. People can feel that energy coming off that person. So whenever people would say that about me, I always just tell them to be quiet. I don't really care about that label. I just, I do love serving other people, but also believe, that there has to be a leader, and whenever it came time for me to lead, I led in everything that I was in. Scouting, I was always a leader. Young men, I was always a leader. With my friends, I always would take responsibility, and we would, lead them to do certain things. So when I went on a mission, went to the MTC, had some great experiences, and I got into the field. I was tired of being a leader. And when it came time for me to be a leader, I turned it down. When I was being groomed to be a district leader or groomed to be a zone leader or to lead in the mission, I turned it down. And I went the other way. I kicked against the pricks, as the scriptures say, because I figured, hey, I've done it enough in my life. Why do I need to do it now? And I turned it off. And I went the other direction. And someone who's going to lead, who doesn't going to lead, for me, what I've learned, even though I did not lead and chose to, I guess, ride the fence, that my example and the way that I did that made other people choose not to choose the right way in the mission and to follow me and what I was doing. So even though I wasn't a leader for good, I just kind of was coasting through the mission, doing whatever I wanted, not following some rules, it caused me to be a leader in a negative way, if that makes sense. And it was a major issue with me. And I had problems with my mission president. People that were in my group, people that I had as friends and brothers, he was sending them home for the minute things. I understand why he did it. He did what he did now. My mission president was President Jensen. And, he had us sign pieces of paper saying we were going to obey certain rules, and we knew that we were signing this piece of paper, and if we didn't obey, we get sent home. And he was just sending people home left and right. And these were my friends. I just felt like he was picking on us. So me and him and I did not get along, and he had every every transfer or every other transfer. A transfer last 6 weeks in the mission field when I was going, and he he would meet each missionary in an area. And the last time he came in to see me, I didn't even go into the building to see him. I was very disrespectful. We didn't, and he didn't know what to do with me. He sent the mission president calls 2 missionaries that are under him as his like VPs, vice presidents. They kind of are leaders in the mission. So we had over 225 missionaries. So these APs, they call me, they come over to the house. They're like, oh, we're staying the night. We're going to go on a trade-off, which means they take my elder and I take theirs. And I'm like, no, we're not doing no trade-off here. Well, the mission president said you had to do it. I'm like, well, we're not doing it. And we got on our bikes. I made my elder come with me. And we didn't even go home until like 12 o'clock. So they left. So I was being very difficult, right? And I just remember this feeling like, why are you fighting against me? And it wasn't too long after that feeling I had that I got home, and I had a voicemail on our answer machine. So those who are listening who aren't as old as I am, back in the day, you'd call somebody on a landline because no one had cell phones, really. I mean, some people did. But you'd call a house phone. There was a answering device that would record you, and then your missed call, and then you'd play that when you get home from work or wherever you went. So I get home, and we're split. We're living with some other elders, and they're like, I could tell something was up. I'm like, what's going on, guys? They're like, oh, you got a missed call. And I'm like, okay, well, who's it from? And I'm thinking maybe some of my family got hurt or something like that. They're like, no. And they're like, but you're going to want to listen to it. And I'm like, okay. So I play it, and it's our area presidency leader. And it was one of the 12 apostles that we have now. And I turned it off. I deleted it. And I called my mission president back, and I said, okay, let's meet, and I'll change my attitude. So I changed my attitude, and all it took was, I don't know. I guess I was scared straight, if I could say it right. Between having that experience with the Savior telling me, why are you fighting me? And then our area president calling in my home and saying, who he was and that he wanted to talk to me. It was just a spiritual experience for me to stop fighting, and be the leader that I'm supposed to be. While I was on my mission, early part of my mission, 9/11 happened. I always like, when I hear people's personal experiences with 9/11, like a tragedy that happened in America, I won't get into details of who I think did it, but I was in the mission field when that happened. We didn't have a phone. Well, we didn't have a phone that you could just talk to anybody on. You talk to your parents maybe twice a year. We didn't have a radio, and we didn't have a TV, so we didn't know what was going on. And we're knocking doors, and we see this. No one's really answering the door. We hear people inside, but everyone's like not answering the door. And we're like, okay, what the heck? So we're in Barstow, California, in the high desert, and we knock on this lady's door who finally opens, and she's crying, and we're like, what is going on? Me and my elder, and she's just like, oh, I can't believe what's going on. Can you believe what's going on? We're like, what? And she opens the door. She's like, look. And we're looking, and she's like, come in. And we're like, oh, we're not really supposed to come in. She's like, come in. So we went in, and we left the door. Can we leave the door open, because that's not. So there's the door open, and we're sitting there, and me and my elder are just like in awe. We can't believe it either. So we're with her when we see the second tower get hit live, and it was just a crazy experience, and I think it was something that happened. There was a lot of spirituality, a lot of leaning and turning towards Jesus Christ and Heavenly Father as a nation. It was a tragedy and a horrible experience, but at the same time, it made people come out of themselves and turn to something greater than themselves for help and for relief from the pain, And we sat there and we prayed with this lady. And we left her a Book of Mormon, and then we kept on, down the road until we were told to do other things. But after my experience in turning back towards the Lord and redevoting myself on my mission 100%, my mission was great for the last, almost a year. My mission left, I had where I was able to devote myself to the full work of the Lord. And I felt like I ended my mission with no regrets, Yeah, I did what I did and went through the experiences I went through. But I think I learned in my mission that it doesn't matter if I don't want to lead or not. If I'm called to lead, by God, then I have to answer his call.
Tribe of Testimonies is not sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The music is a traditional hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, arranged and performed by Kyle Forsyth. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear how this podcast is affecting you. And I'm always looking for guests. If you or someone you know would be a great guest, you can reach me at tribeoftestimonies@gmail.com.